Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse just came out this past Friday.
I really enjoyed this movie, man. A lot.
I agree.
This was one of those ones in terms of comic book content that'll like stick out into memory. I enjoyed it more than Into the Spider-Verse, even though I like that movie.
I feel it really raised the stakes of what was brought in the first movie.
Sure.
Like it was, usually sequels, I don't think really do a great job at that. But I think this one really took it to another level.
It managed to kind of like stay isolated, but at the same time work within the Marvel map as it is. Right?
Yeah.
I think the only thing that I feel like they missed an opportunity on to really like solidify their own canon would have been to include some of the stuff from the video game. Right? Like, why not? At that point, I mean, shit, we got fucking Porky Pig Spider-Man. I think you could find a way to have a clip of, the Sony video game, Miles.
Yeah. I mean, literally every Spider-Man was pretty much represented here.
Every Spider-Man. That was another thing that I liked about what they kind of did with this story and Miles altogether. It wasn't that it was a whole bunch of Peter Parkers and Miles. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't even... It was like... It was every Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. And so, like, for the Spider-Verse thing, if you're trying to conceive your own multiverse concept and you're starting it, right? Like, we haven't seen anything like this for Spider-Man crossing multiple platforms. If that's what you're going for, then you have a chance to kind of you get the chance to establish it. You get the chance to tell how it's going to work. Yeah. And I think it's a much better pathway for them to explore it as a way of the role of Spider-Man being a thing across the multiverse, as opposed to what it is MCU version. It's like, oh, every universe is a Loki. Every universe there's a Captain. You know what I mean? Because then, first of all, it allows each of those characters to be their own and be their own person. Have that same through line, like as you see in the movie, like that connects them all. The same type of canon event that jumps them all off. But there are certain nuances and changes that make the characters what they are, as opposed to just being the same Peter Parker in a different setting. The Issa Rae, Jessica Drew.
I was going to ask you about that.
It wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be.
It wasn't really a focal point for her at all.
It wasn't, and she had a husband, and they were happy that they were having a kid, so, I was all good there. I, for the life of me, still didn't understand why she had to be pregnant. I didn't. I don't know why. It didn't play a role. Yeah, it just kind of felt like, oh, yeah, and she's pregnant.
I'm assuming maybe it had a little bit to do with Gwen finding her even more badass because, she's doing all this badass stuff and she's pregnant.
Would it have taken anything away from her if she wasn't? Yeah, I just don't feel like it played a role. I thought like maybe the baby was going to play, and maybe it still does,
Yeah. Apparently, Issa Rae had some hesitations about her being pregnant. I don't know if it was the same hesitations that you had.
I would have had the same questions, like, okay, what's going on here? Like, I'm single black baby mama, Spider Woman. Is that what y'all trying to give me, or what's going on? But not to diminish anybody's experience. I'm just saying, like, to be on a big screen as a Spider Woman and you got to be, a single black mother, it's very, very tropish. A little much,
for sure.
Yeah, very tropish.
Yeah, I thought that the characters that they brought, much to what you were saying before, I think they did a really good job with every single character. Even the characters that I'm not supposed to necessarily like Miguel O'Hara and obviously
I like Oscar Isaac did a very good job as Miguel O'Hara. I thought that was pretty good.
I thought everybody was at least likable from a standpoint of what they were for the story. And I think they did a really good job at, developing the story with each character involved. Sure. We didn't get, the Spider-Man that we got in the original one. We got some new ones. We got like Spider-Punk and
Could you hear him? Did you have problems hearing him? I've been seeing
from
that
time to time
had trouble understanding him.
I think that's because of the laid back demeanor of my boy
Kaluuya.
Yeah,
I thought that
like it was a little too.
Yeah, as I was watching it, I thought it was purposeful. I thought they were doing that on purpose.
Yeah,
but then like seeing how many people kind of came, because I just brushed it off. I didn't really think anything he was saying was
I
consequential.
did feel like at times it was like there'd be something pivotal, and I'd be like,
well, no. Okay, so at the times where he was communicating, where he was saying something that matters, he kind of added his hands with it, like when he was telling Miles how to get out of the force fields and stuff like that.
True.
Or when he quit, I heard that clear all the way through. Yeah. Like when they were saying when he was saying things that were consequential to the dialogue,
you can still pick up what the at least context of it was. Yeah, I got
it. At least, like you said, at least through the context of his body language and everything else. But there was a lot more dialogue in there where I just kind of brushed it off as, I think they're trying to put that as like he was mumbling. I don't particularly remember too many lines from Spider-Punk in the first movie, so it's like,
I don't think he was in the first movie, was he?
Wasn't he? I thought he was.
No, I think it was Spider-Man Noir, the Spider-Ham.
You're right, because we didn't see a lot of them.
Yeah, we didn't see them in this movie.
We did,
well,
but not
for a quick second.
Yeah.
But then, we saw more Spider-Punk. We saw the
Peter Mumbai
version of Spider-Man.
Peter.
Yeah.
Peter.
Yeah. So we saw some different Spider-Man in this one, which, at least at the very least brings forth the lore a little bit better, because now we got more characters to kind of work with. Mm-hmm. But again, from my standpoint, I liked every single character that was involved.
Some of the negatives, I guess, would be I didn't have a lot, honestly.
I didn't either. You know what? I thought that they handled going into the next movie pretty well. I mean, it was a pretty big cliffhanger. It was kind of a long cliffhanger to the point where you kind of expected something to happen right then and there, and it just kind of didn't.
I didn't really feel like most of the movie we had a villain. I didn't feel like there was a big bad or a big bad problem until we got into that point where they were at the headquarters and Miguel O'Hara and all of that.
I think
until then, I didn't feel like we really had either an antagonist or a problem to solve up until that point. And I felt like that kind of got belabored a little bit, because like through 2/3 of the movie, I'm just like, oh, we just kind of kicking it. Like, we not really, ain't nothing wrong. But the worst thing that's about to happen is Miles gonna get ass whooped when he get home. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, I mean,
worst thing.
I think is it the Spot?
Yeah.
I think he's supposed to be. He'll probably have more of a prevalence in the next one.
Yeah, I didn't end up taking him seriously until it was time to take him serious.
I think that
was the point. Yeah, that was
kind
of the point.
Because it was very comical, and it only lasted for like the first 30 minutes.
His first scene, I barely paid him attention. Like, it was cool seeing Miles and the suit, and that whole scene in the grocery store definitely reminded me of the video game. But I didn't pay the Spot attention until everything went awry in that different universe, and then they ended up having to go back and holler at Miguel about it.
Yeah.
But that's when things started to come into shape as to what the issue is. Here's my thing about making Miles. I guess he's the only one that really wasn't supposed to be Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. Like his spider that bit him was meant for somebody else. He's the anomaly, right? Here's my thing with doing that. Don't let that just stick into this trilogy. Miles being the only Spider-Man that wasn't supposed to be Spider-Man is a quirk. It's different. It lets him stand apart from, Ben Reilly, who was fucking hilarious.
Yes.
I thought that shit landed perfectly.
Yeah.
There's a way to do slapstick comedy that doesn't overpower the narrative or the surrounding dialogue. That was one of the Guardians of the Galaxy did it pretty well as well. But Ben Reilly's scenes were hilarious.
Yeah, no, agreed.
But it gives him something. He's not so much of an offshoot from Peter that it's just like a carbon copy with a few caveats. You know what I mean? But then if we'll probably talk about this in Behind the Cape, but if we're doing a live action Miles movie as well, which they should fast track, to hell with El Muerto and Madam Web. Okay, fast track Miles Morales.
I actually saw a tweet this weekend about how this generation may be become more familiar with Miles Morales as Spider-Man than
hell no.
Peter Parker.
No. Fuck no. No.
Just because it seems like there's much more.
There's too much Peter. There's too much Peter for that to be a thing. Now, can he become his own standalone character? And that's kind of what I was getting at, with my last point. Can he become his own thing? There's a few things that would need to happen. It's possible. But sticking with that narrative that Miles kind of stands apart from the rest of the Spider-Men universe, the Jessica Drews, the Black Cats, the Gwen Stacy's, all of them, right? Mm-hmm. That should hold true in the live action as well, which gives you a reason to maybe rename Miles so that he's not the other Spider-Man. Right? There are plenty of other Spider-Men. So if he's the one, if he's the Neo of the Spider-Man universe, the anomaly, then make him the one. Then release him from the Spider-Man moniker and give him a name that he owns for himself. That's the first step for me.
You know what? Yeah, you're right, because that starts to become like Sam Wilson as Captain America.
Yeah, like you at a certain point, if you're married to that mantle, then you can never get away from the original. Cool. Granted, give him a new moniker then. Because what can't be ignored, and I don't want to spend a whole bunch of time on this, but what can't be ignored is that his popularity has outgrown that of an ancillary character. It's a fact. You can't argue with numbers. So the question of the owners of that property at that point is, what do you do with it? Okay, Sony, would you rather have two Spider-Mans, or would you rather have Spider-Man and newly named Miles Morales something? Because that gives you two properties that can stand alone and survive on their own and perpetuate a tree underneath the same way Peter Parker does, as opposed to one offshoot of a main character. It's kind of it's a shortcut, because the way that you actually do that is just go with an original character with their own story. I shouldn't say original. Miles Morales is an original character. I mean, like, someone who's not ancillary to a mantle already.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's how you do it. Truly. But if you want to cut the corner, it seems like you have the market to do so at the moment.
If they do that, he's just going to become another black character with electric powers.
Hey, I don't know what it is with black characters and electricity. I don't know what it is. But yeah, very fond of making us electrified.
Which isn't, I don't think there's anything racial behind it. It just kind of happened that way.
If we dig deep enough, we'll find the reason. I just don't want to look right now. I don't want to look.
It'd be a little much.
Yeah. It's like the ice cream song. If you keep asking questions, you're going to find out some shit you don't like.
Yikes. Yeah, you also mentioned in the out of theater reaction, like the different animation styles, which is something they had in the first one, but I think they kind of
beefed it up a little bit, man.
Yeah.
First of all, okay, how do you feel about animation that is of the same structure or same type of visual quality of that of anime, but is not Japanese? Is it still anime? Like, is anime a technique, or is anime a cultural designation?
Is the Boondocks anime?
I don't see. Thank you. Is Avatar Last Airbender, is that anime? That's gonna kind of tell me, where we're at with this, because there were definitely some very anime feeling scenes. Like, if you mess with Demon Slayer, if you mess with Attack on Titan, if you mess with Vinland Saga, you definitely got some feels of that, those long battle scenes. Like, I loved that. Mm-hmm. I know some people complained about the pace. I think the fact that we didn't have a kind of overarching, this is what we need to do, this is why we need Miles and Gwen together, this is what the problem they're solving. Without that, you better fill that time up with Zoom.
Action.
You better fill that time up with Zoom if there's nothing to get to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, I think that was more so of a creative choice as to how to present these next two films, but it landed with me.
Yeah.
It landed with me.
I really like the obvious Spider-Man chase scene.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was really, really done really well. can't think if there's anything else that personally I want to touch. I thought it was, again, I just thought it was a really good movie. The story was told very well, and the way they set up everything is kind of akin to John Wick almost. You know how they set up the next portion of it. It felt like
Miles Wick at certain times. But if you're trying to prove to me once again that this is a character who is underestimated, a character whose prowess and power set is underestimated, is undervalued, then you have to go a long way to show me why. And so these first two movies, we saw Miles coming into his own as a hero in general and into the Spider-Verse. Across the Spider-Verse, he's maturing, right? He's starting to show what his abilities are, where he's better. So then by the time we get to Beyond the Spider-Verse, which was the doubly named third installment, that should be a fully realized Miles Morales. We should be seeing him at an apex level, which I'm very interested to see, since it seems like, you know, I guess we'll get to it at the end of the review, what the end of the movie reveal was, since they didn't have an end credit scene. Seems to be his biggest foe. One thing that I did kind of wish went a little bit differently. The parallels between Gwen and Miles and their stories with their parents. If we would have just taken the very beginning scene with Gwen, given her background, blah yada yada, this is what happened to Peter, this is what my dad thinks about it. That leads obviously into the scene where she runs into Miguel and Jessica. And then not picked it back up until that scene. That was a very good scene though. Where the colors were changing around them, where she's having that conversation with her dad. She gets sent back to her universe. Woo!
Yeah.
I think the constant back and forth. Hey, this is what Miles is going through, and then this is Gwen, and then Miles is going through the same thing, but here's Gwen too. Like that got to be a little bit much. Yeah, that got to be a little bit much. It didn't take up too much time, because I felt like when we weren't doing that, we were punching something. So kudos. But even still, because you know what it does. If they ever planned on having a Gwen Stacy movie, I don't know why I need to watch it.
Because everything, yeah.
I've seen her character arc now. I've seen what her deep dark pitfall is. I've seen who it's affected and how it's affected her life and the people around her. And I've seen how she got out of it. So where do we go from there? You know, outside of her adventures with Miles, what could you do now with Gwen Stacy now that you've already told that story?
Yeah.
Is where I'm at with it. Just about everything else I liked.
I think they handled reveals and plot twists, especially towards the end, very well.
So yeah, let's talk about it, right? So, right, okay, so first of all, when they're about to send Miles back, right? Big contraption. And the AI Spider-Man, whatever, the AI Spider-Man, kind of gives him that look right at the end. And I'm like, man, just send him somewhere else. Like, I literally said it out loud. I was like, man, just send him somewhere else. Don't send him back home. Send him somewhere else. So then does that, right? And so it does end up being that he goes to the wrong Earth. In this Earth, his Uncle Aaron is alive, and he's not the Prowler. He's the Prowler.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. All right. So we've done the Miles kind of clone saga thing in the comics. It wasn't a bestseller. I'll just leave it at that. Given that everything, you know, so far with Into the Spider-Verse hasn't necessarily been to the letter of Miles Morales' comic book history, right? Obviously, his dad's still alive in this universe. Do we expect them to be married to the canon, I guess, a little bit more than the MCU would be in this regard? Or is it going to be something where, you know, his father survives and we can... Maybe it doesn't go necessarily the way of the clone saga that it happened in the comics.
If they really want this to be solidified as a great story all around, I think the father has to go, unfortunately. Now, of course, I don't want to see a black father go, but that's the story.
Yeah. I mean, that's this is the story of Spider-Man.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
and I think they've so far have done a really good job with death and grief.
But then again, his loss, Miles' loss, was Uncle Aaron. Was the Prowler.
Yep.
He saves his life, and Kingpin kills him.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like he did kind of have his own big Uncle Ben moment.
Yeah.
Because I was kind of thinking about that when Miguel was even explaining it. And I was like, well, but what about Prowler? What if his version of, Captain Stacy or whoever else was Uncle Aaron? I don't know.
Yeah, especially since, I guess, if he wasn't Spider-Man, Prowler wouldn't have died.
Literally. I mean, I teaches you about responsibility. The only reason why he was there was chasing you. I don't know. We'll see how it all plays out, but it does make me very interested. Keeps conversation going about the next movie.
Mm-hmm.
I'm astounded that an animated film,
Agreed.
animated franchise has kind of managed to keep some type of luster on the reputation of the Marvel brand, not MCU, but the Marvel brand. Has managed to keep some of the luster on there. No Way Home, Into the Spider-Verse, Across the Spider-Verse, right? While everything else seems to be on a downward turn.
Yeah.
They're not looking too shabby. Now, they got to clean some other stuff up there at Sony. They got some other stuff in-house that
for sure.
A lot better. We'll talk about that some more. But this film was very enjoyable, man. I kind of teetered with the score a little bit. I initially came in at 8.5. But then I kept asking myself, well, what's keeping it from being a 9? Like the Gwen Stacy thing with Miles.
Crazy, I was thinking the same thing.
I don't think that's enough to knock it down, man. Like, this was a really good film. Looked good, sounded good, story was solid.
Yeah.
Want more? Planning to see it again. 9 out of 10.
I would agree.
9.
Did I give John Wick a 9?
I think so.
Yeah, if I gave John Wick a 9, this is definitely up there as well. To your point about the animation, it's crazy that, like you said, they're able to do this with an animated movie, a movie that's also family friendly.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are some things that you can do with animation that's obviously you can't do with a live action movie.
Sure.
However, the storytelling is something that across the board you should be able to should be able to handle, and I think they've done an amazing job with that so far.
Absolutely. Give us your thoughts and your score in the comments below. After you see the movie, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Come back later this week, or this will probably, most of the episode will already be out by then. But come back following weeks. We got plenty of movies coming out this summer that we'll be reviewing.
Yeah, absolutely. And make sure you check out his out of theater reaction to Spider-Verse, which includes a special guest.
The premiere of my little buddy on the podcast.
And then make sure that you subscribe. Like you said, we will be doing movie reviews for all the biggest releases.